You know, I am a sucker for a good conlang.
Are you indeed?
Yeah, give me those long appendices with pages and pages of grammar and those obscure IPA consonants like alveolar fricatives and velar approximants. I want all of it.
Well, you know, I'm something of a conlang connoisseur myself, but I only dabble in the more esoteric side of the art. Have you heard of the works of Samuel Ferdinald Leavitt, perhaps?
No, who is that?
Only one of the most famous conlangers who ever lived. Here's his picture.
You have him saved as your wallpaper?
Of course.
So what did he do? Was he one of those people who helped with like Klingon or Dothraki or something?
Oh no, nothing like that. His work was a little more naturalistic.
Like Tolkien's?
Tolkien was certainly quaint.
That doesn't sound like a compliment the way you said it.
Well, Tolkien never did reach the heights of Leavitt. After all, his languages were mostly for his own amusement. He never expected people to speak them. But Leavitt, he wanted to create complete languages, languages with hundreds of thousands of words that could theoretically be spoken by entire civilizations of people if history had gone differently.
Wow. And what did he do with all that?
He wrote a novel.
Just one novel?
Yes, just one novel. His magnum opus.
Sorry, and what was it called? I just want to look it up real quick.
I can't just tell you.
Why not?
Because it was entirely written in one of his invented languages. Even the title.
But, okay, that's impressive, but why would you write an entire book in a conlang? Does he expect people to learn the conlang to read the book?
Of course not.
Oh, so he translated it back into English then?
No, not my Leavitt. He would never do that.
Then what?
Leavitt's work cannot be translated. You have to understand the language, you see, in order to translate it.
Oh, you mean he was like the only person who knew how to speak his conlang and then he died without leaving any notes behind or something?
No, I mean he couldn't have translated it even if he wanted to because he didn't speak the language.
Okay, I'm sorry. We're still talking about conlangs, right?
Yes.
Specifically a conlang that this Leavitt guy invented.
Yeah.
So why would he not be able to translate his own conlang?
Well, for one thing, it was written entirely for a race of beings that have completely different anatomy from our own. Each of them have 3 noses, each of which has 3 nostrils that can be individually opened or closed, giving a total of 511 nasal consonants.
What?
Not including voiced nasals, of course, which are different from normal nasal consonants because each nostril has its own voice box. If you use both the nostril box and the voice box to voice a consonant, then you get a different consonant than if you just use the voice box, or vice versa.
Okay, nope, I think I get it now. This man was just insane.
Not to mention the conlang was a tonal language in which every morpheme can be expressed a total of 798 distinct ways, not all of which would be visible to human ears because some of them dip below 20 Hz and some of them rise above 20,000 Hz.
But why? What's the point of making a conlang you literally can't speak? There's no reason to do that.
Well, what's the point of making any conlang? Artistic fulfillment, I would imagine.
Okay, fine, but that doesn't explain why he would need to actually speak his language in order to translate it. He doesn't actually need to voice those consonants in order to write the book in English.
True, but his inability to understand his language goes beyond that. You've heard of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, I'm sure.
You mean the idea that there are certain concepts in some languages that can only be understood if you speak that language?
Exactly. Leavitt was a big believer in Sapir-Whorf. He believed the novel literally could not be understood unless it was read in its original language, not even by himself.
So you're saying he wrote an entire book while not understanding a single word he was writing?
Exactly.
That doesn't make any sense.
Well, it does make more sense if you think about the process of artistic creation as more one of discovery than one of invention.
But then the book could just be gibberish for all we know.
Well, Leavitt was quite certain that it wasn't only coherent, but that if it had been written by the race of beings he had invented for it, it would be considered the greatest work of literature that civilization had ever produced. And most Leavitt experts tend to agree with him in that assessment. In fact, some have argued that attempting to translate the novel at all would be akin to cultural appropriation.
For a culture that doesn't even exist?
Exist is a relative term.
Okay, but I'm sorry, I still don't understand how you would even go about thinking that you're writing a book that is coherent while not understanding a single word of it. You're acting like he was possessed by like a demon from another dimension while he was writing this thing or something.
Well, one of Leavitt's earliest ideas when he was preparing to write the book was actually to alter his own biology so that he could speak his conlang and therefore understand what he was writing. He was one of the early transhumanist adapters, you understand, so he wanted to get cybernetic implants in order to mimic the nasal tracts of his species.
But he didn't do that?
Well, no, because he ultimately decided it wouldn't be artistically challenging enough. It would be one thing, he figured, to write a great work of literature while being a member of the species that had produced that literature. But to write a great work of literature while being biologically incapable of understanding the language in which that literature was produced, well, that would be quite possibly the most extraordinary artistic achievement in the history of man.
And you think he achieved that?
I don't just think it. I know it. Otherwise, there's no good way to explain the existence of the book. For example, we could say that Leavitt was mad, but we know he wasn't. He was always regarded as one of the smartest people in the room wherever he went. And we could say that he was lying, but we also know that he valued his personal integrity more than just about anything in the world. So the only plausible explanation for the book's existence is that he really did achieve exactly what he set out to achieve.
Wow. Okay, so you're You're actually just as insane as this Leavitt guy was.
I have a copy of the book. I can lend it to you if you like next time I come over. The illustrations are fascinating.
There's illustrations?
Yes, of course. Very detailed ones.
I mean, I'm morbidly curious now. I guess that would be interesting to look at.
Of course, you would need to look through an infrared camera to see them because the people in the world he invented only see infrared light.
Actually, you know, on second thought, I think I'll just stick to Tolkien instead.